Welcome back to All Business Media TV, where it's all business, all the time. Here's your host, Chrissy J.
Welcome to All Business Media TV. I'm your host, Chrissy J, and tonight I have a very special guest with me. He is an artist from New York who manages to capture the feminine mystique and feminism in almost everything he does. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Kim Berg to tonight's show.
Thank you.
Hi, it's very nice to see you finally, Kim. We've been speaking so much for months. It's nice to finally meet you in person and to be able to look at some of your work as well.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to be talking about modern Paleolithic art. That's the name that I've given it. So, I call my work modern Paleolithic art. Modern Paleolithic art draws its inspiration from the late Paleolithic, Neolithic era, when women were highly respected. We are not talking about the Neanderthal era of human development. I'm referring to the period including the late Paleolithic, 30,000 to 10,000 BC, and Neolithic, 10,000 to 4,000 BC. This is a time when Cro-Magnon people had migrated into the Near East and Southern Europe from Eastern Africa. They looked very much like we do today, with the same erect posture and dexterity as we have. In the communities they developed, women were the driving force in the creation of a flourishing society that had no precedent. That's why it's important for women of the 21st century, seeking their place in the world, to understand their ancient origins. The truth is, as I see it, early women were the first civilizing force in the world. This is the legacy that early Neolithic women left for future generations to follow. It was a social order of peaceful coexistence rather than military carnage. It was a social order of peaceful coexistence rather than military carnage. It was one way that developed social skills of compassion and empathy rather than greed, control, and aggressive domination. This is the Neolithic heritage modern women can be proud of and build upon. This is the heritage which can inspire important changes and advances in our own modern civilization. The modern Paleolithic art that I've created is designed to help us become aware of our origins. That means, for example, the ability to visualize from our early ancestral sisters who saw themselves, 1, in relationship to their bodies, 2, in relationship to into nature and the natural world, 3, their relationship to their pregnant body, 4, their relationship to a divine female religion of goddess spirituality, and 5, in relation to their neighbors. In the words of Lane Redman, author of When the Drummers Were Women, she writes, quote, "We must revision the past to envision the future." What I am saying is, this was the state of the world before a patriarchal social system was initiated, beginning about 3000 BC. In other words, my art is holding up a mirror to the time when women were completely free and in control of their lives. The women you see depicted in the art images shown here are how I believe modern women might look outside the bounds and restrictions of a patriarchal philosophy and society. You may question the nudity that prevails in these images. The truth is, Paleolithic art nearly always depicts the female figure as nude. This is because women were proud of their bodies, which they saw as an important aspect of their identity. It was their bodies that contained the mystical, sacred ability to bring a living being into the world. They wanted their bodies to be a constant reminder to everyone who saw them of their embodied communion to the divine power, the great Mother Goddess.
Some very complex and very rich issues that you are trying to pack into your art, and from what I'm seeing, it doesn't even start to scratch the surface. As a woman is starting to look into some of these images, and like as you said, just we really did hold a very different place in society in that era, and as the patriarchy was established, it sort of robbed the modern woman to what we are today, and we are starting to gain a bit of a foothold in gaining some of that back, but
Yes.
we still have a very far way to go before we can even attain the status that we once held. But these issues that you bring into your artwork, and we're going to look through some of them in a moment, you would think that that's something that doesn't necessarily translate very well because it's so complex and it's so detailed and it's so involved, but it doesn't have to be. So let's take a look at the first one of your pieces that you've shown today. Now, what is this one called?
This is Genesis. I have several. I think this is Genesis 2.
Okay.
And it features the goddess with rays of light radiating from her image. And it portrays a very powerful woman, which is the whole object, to be a creator. And in these times, Neolithic times and Paleolithic times especially, the idea of who created the world, who created life, who created everything that we see on Earth, had a very important, it was very important for people to try to understand what it was all about. But the one thing that they were all agreed on for thousands of years after, even from the Paleolithic into Neolithic times, it had to be a woman who was the creator, because it was so obvious. It was women who gave birth to new life. So it only follows from that if anything else is being created, it had to be a woman.
It has to be, because from what they've seen, women are the ones who create. Women are the ones who birth new life. They're the ones who house the new life. They're the ones who nurture and foster things to grow. So reasonably assuming it would have to have been a woman who created everything that they see before them.
Right, and if anyone would have come along at that time and said it was a man who was created,
they'd be like,
they would have
no.
laughed. Really?
No, well, you have a goddess, you must have a god, I suppose, all things in balance. But, if you would have tried to tell them that, great goddess was a man, they, like you said, they would have laughed right in your face.
I know, it just wouldn't have made any sense at all.
No, because they'd be like, no, men destroy, men hunt.
Yes.
Women are the ones who foster and nurture and create.
Yes.
So,
And
no.
that's one example of what happened when the goddess culture was replaced by the patriarchal culture. The one thing that they did is reverse everything that had been believed before and taken for granted.
It's very true.
And somehow they were able to pull it off, but it took a long, long time.
It did.
Even when God was being worshipped and in the state religion, women still had their shrines and they were still honoring the goddess in their homes. And this went on for a long time. So the transition from the goddess culture to the patriarchal culture took a long time, thousands of years actually, to be completed.
Absolutely, and now we're starting to work on reverse that.
Yes, right. It might take
Going-
another few
yeah.
thousand years.
Exactly, we're going
But
back
we'll
just
do
a
it.
little bit. We'll get there. I might not be around to see it, but we will get there.
Yeah,
All right,
right.
so let's take a look at this next one here.
Okay, this is the goddess, the drummer. You can see that she's a very powerful woman, holding the drum and using the drum and her, how it matches with her body at the same time, creates an interesting effect. One is complementing the other.
And
But-
she's so confident and unafraid.
Yes.
You would think, for anyone to be alone and naked in the woods with wild animals, and there she is. She's confident in herself. She's
Yes.
confident, and she's just there. She's part of nature. She's not afraid of nature.
Right.
And you can see that in the very just complacent look on her face. She's completely at peace with where she is and who she is.
Yes, and she has a very, very strong, determined expression on her face. But the
Absolutely.
interesting thing is, I didn't feel compelled to make her flesh-like. She's green. Everything's in green, which is also gives it an idea of the life that's being created within her body. And the rays, descending through the trees is also a symbol of power and glory. And it actually was inspired by a scene like that. That's how the picture itself took effect in my mind.
Oh.
Because I do live in the woods, and this scene, you can see it. It's not there. You don't see it all the time, but sometimes you do get that effect where the light is coming through the trees, just like this.
Just like that, it's almost in perfect broken rays, just
Yeah,
shining through the
yeah.
trees. Oh, it certainly gives it quite a realistic ambiance too, because you're looking at it and it's so bright and it's so powerful. And it's almost perfectly cascading around her.
Right.
As almost as if it's just there to show her off, not to put her behind it, but just almost to envelop
Yeah.
her.
Yeah, showcase it. It
Yes.
actually showcases her.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now this one here is also accompanied by a brief bit of text at the bottom. Come, lift your arms in jubilation. I will meet your joy with joy. I will meet you with each turn of the fiery wheel.
Yes. Actually, these pictures were supposed to be at the end. I
Oh.
don't know how this happened.
Okay, so let's do away with that sneak
These
peek,
are all.
and let's
This
see.
no, that's the end. That's the last
Okay.
picture, actually.
Okay,
And that's also another one. Okay, here.
here we go.
Okay, this is mandala 8, if I remember correctly. And here again, the mandala is a symbol of spirituality. It's more known and better known in India and other Eastern areas like that. In the West, it's not very well known, but I've been using it in my artwork to symbolize the spiritual. And here it's interesting. The whole sky is lit up with this mandala image. And she seems to just very casually looking over her shoulder, and suddenly she sees this mandala image covering the entire sky. And it's when you have an epiphany where something suddenly just strikes you and everything has changed. Everything's changed. And that's sort of the effect that is happening to this woman, just casually looking over her shoulder and suddenly seeing this.
Yeah, it's like, oh, hey, what's that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like
right.
you said, you could tell from her body language, she's just very relaxed, and it's like,
Right,
oh, yeah,
right.
oh, giant mandala in the sky. Oh,
And
okay.
also there's rays coming down and hitting the earth. Which,
Yes, I can see that on the
yes,
on the
and
side.
that shows you the power of this image.
Yes, and everything is all from the same color palette. It's all enveloping her, so she's becoming part of this as well.
Right, right.
Fantastic.
And I believe in keeping things on a minimalist. For me, minimalist is more powerful than having a lot of things covering the page. And this is more striking just by these two images, the woman and the mandala. And it sort of looks like on a desert scene, but that way nothing is really distracting your eye from the main subject matter.
Absolutely. You see the important parts of the picture,
Right.
you know, and you see her and just, you know, the power that's behind her and just her acceptance of it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. She's not scared by it or frightened by it.
Not in the slightest. She's just
Yeah.
ready to accept it. Ready to accept it. So let's take a look. And this
Now,
one,
this was a very recent painting that I did, and the object is to make it interracial and intergenerational. I call it free for all or free for all. It could be either way, work either way. But also, it's very important for me to include interracial aspect here, because feminism has come under a lot of criticism because it just seems to be more important for white women than for black women. And actually, black women are more enthusiastic about feminism than a lot of white women. But anyway, I'm trying to bring the two together here, and they're both expressing the freedom that they feel. One holding up a banner, the other letting a bird loose into the sky. And in the distance, there's the picture, the image of a young child bending over, playing in the sand. So whatever freedom these two people, women, can bring into the world, the child is the one who's going to experience it.
absolutely.
It's exactly the way that the women's suffrage movement went, you know. For 50 years, you know, they gave talks, they crisscrossed the country, did everything they could think of to make it into a constitution. And now, how many people think about that? You
No,
know?
we don't. It's just something we accept as part of our life. We also have the right to vote. We don't think about all those women that went out there and fought for that, fought for us to have that equality.
That's just it,
know?
yes. And that's probably what will happen here too. The
Yep.
child will probably not remember these two women who were broadcasting the freedom. that
Probably
they were.
not. But you know what? The generation that comes after her won't remember her struggles to gain freedom for them.
Yeah,
you know?
that's the problem.
Hopefully we won't be fighting too far longer after that young child's next
Yes.
child. This is a very striking
thi-
use of color in this one.
Yeah. It's, this is part of the meditation. In fact, this is the first in the meditation series. And what I'm trying to do is bring into the woods something that is a part of our natural life, but put it in a setting that's surrounded by trees, by nature. And the woman is looking down. She doesn't seem to care, you know, by the fact that she's sitting in a chair in the woods. You know, for most people, this would seem kind
a
of
little
odd.
odd. Just a little bit. Like, oh, hey, look at this recliner sitting in the middle of the woods, you know?
Right, right. But the whole idea is nature is something that we can live in, you know, in any context. And we can bring our chair or our rocking chair or whatever we want into nature, into a natural scene like this, and it fits in perfectly.
It does. It does. But I do like how the offset of color, she seems more at one with nature than the chair does. Like it fits, but we'd be okay on our own without that creature comfort.
Right.
We would still be just at home in nature without that chair, and I do
Right.
like that. I also saw a very nice blue. But I do, and like I said, it's a very bold use of color. It's a departure from some of the other works I've seen, both
Yes.
tonight and previously. It's like I said, it's just very rich tones in that photo.
Yes. Okay, this is,
Oh,
no,
oh,
that
sorry.
was the
There
one
we go.
that was supposed to be started with.
Sorry. Then
Okay, this is part of the Blue Lumina series. And this really is this is really my way of honoring the body. In Paleolithic times, women's body was considered very important, much more, because it was the body that gave life, was able to give birth to life. Mm-hmm. But they were, as a result, they were very proud of their bodies. And as I have said here, usually in Paleolithic art, the woman, the goddess, is usually seen as nude. And most of the figures in my art also feature the nude body. And it's because they were very proud of their body. They wanted to be seen. Mm-hmm. Because whenever you see a woman's body, especially if it's nude, it reinforces the idea that this woman has the power of regeneration, mm-hmm. of creating. And this was, the whole idea of conception was completely a mystery in Paleolithic and Neolithic times. Mm-hmm. And to be reminded that in my body I am able to create new life. Mm-hmm. They took great pride in that. And so for them, their body was something they were proud of, and they wanted to be seen that way. It was also, could also be said it was part of their power too, that they had this special, but they knew from the beginning that this was not their doing, but because they were in alignment with the mother goddess. Mm-hmm. Without that, the idea of birth from a woman's body would not be possible.
Absolutely. There was no shame to it because that was who they were meant to be.
Yes.
That was a pride in that, and not just the fact that they were, the ones who were able to bear life, but that they were the ones created from the great goddess. So they were the ones, who had this pride in their, they're very comfortable with who they are, and they're comfortable with that responsibility. Right. It's not necessarily just power, but a responsibility for providing future generations. And the woman's body not only brings forward the child, but is also responsible for nourishing the child shortly after birth. So there is a great amount of respect too, and pride in that body, and there was nothing for them to feel shameful over.
Yes, and it's because of that, I feel at least, that when women were developing their own social structure, mm-hmm. We just read here, one of the things they brought was a compassion, mm-hmm. and it was compassionate, and they were thinking not just of themselves, but they were empathetic as well. Mm-hmm. They were always thinking of their child and what they could do for their child. And when women were developing themselves in this way, they were taking a direction that led to a peaceful society. There was no violence, no conflict. There may have been some conflict, but not violence, mm-hmm. physical conflict. And this is all because they were learning to show compassion and empathy, where men did not have that experience, not the way women were having it. So they were taking the direction of their society in a completely different direction than what later developed when patriarchy took over, and it was more or less created by men who didn't have the same outlook and the same values that women had expressed during the goddess culture.
That's very true.
Yes. So that's why the Blue Lumina series, the blue is really to create, for me, it creates a kind of mystical mm-hmm. aura that you get just from the color itself. it's a lot of mystery And this is another in the Blue Lumina series. This is actually the first one I did in the Blue Lumina series. And it also, all these images are very meditative. You can, even you can't see her face, but you know she's in deep meditative state. And the fact that her body actually glows, seems to glow, is just another way of describing the effect of the spiritual character of the figure.
It's almost like she's radiating her essence.
Right.
You know, it's almost like she's so in tune with herself and so in tune and in harmony with what's around her that she's almost radiating. It's almost a pulsing energy that you can see coming off of her.
And it seems to be coming from within her.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just the light that's shining on top on her body. And this is another in the Blue Lumina series. This was done later, but you can see how comfortable she is with her body, you know, and it's voluptuous, but it's she's totally immersed in her own being, and again, being blue, it gives her a certain aura and mystery that you can't express in any other way.
No, because although a lot of people would associate blue with some sort of sadness or depression, here it casts almost a mystical light.
Yeah.
It's almost like very metaphysical, very spiritual, and you really can't see everything that there is. That energy is almost hidden within that color.
Right.
It's a very interesting effect.
Yeah. And blue is my favorite color.
All the best people have blue as their favorite color.
Yeah. Okay, this is part of the Femina series. I really like, to me, I'm very interested to see how you respond to this, because to me it expresses the very essence of femininity.
She's just very casually, very lying there. You know, you can tell almost no effort has gone into her appearance for the day. She's very naturally feminine. She's just laying there. She's just, it's very hard to explain even as a woman how I'm feeling about this, but
Yes.
you can just, I do agree that you definitely capture femininity right here, and it's very hard, like I said, to describe it as a woman, but I absolutely see that. There's just something in her posture, something in that, just that look on her face.
Right.
It's what says it all to me.
And she's trying to hide her face
Yeah,
slightly.
almost just like,
But she's not quite certain if she's being accepted or what the person is thinking, whoever is looking at her. But to do it with such sensitivity is somehow, there was a period in my life when I was doing these drawings and meeting the right people to do the drawings with, which is also very important. You can't do a drawing like this without knowing the person quite well.
oh, absolutely.
You know, and to have a person like that willing to pose like this is also very important. And you have to have a pretty good friendship with the person in order for them to trust you.
Absolutely, especially with something like this where you're, you know, it's not just a matter of being nude for it, but you're allowing them to capture the essence of your personality and the essence of who you are as a woman. You know, that's a very intimate, a very revealing thing.
It is.
You know,
it is.
and that's not something that you would just open up to very many people about and be like, yeah, you know, like, it's not something that you would do to every person that you meet or many people that you meet.
No, and to be able to capture it is also. And I never felt, when I was doing these, that I had to draw the whole figure, but only certain areas of the figure. And that also emphasizes or focuses the eye on just what you consider the most important, the strongest emotional response.
Very true. Very true.
And this is part of the meditation series. And The interesting thing here, I was using gold spray paint to get the backgrounds. I have other paintings, using that same effect. But I was sort of at the end of the can at this point, and it didn't come out as a smooth, evenly background of gold, but it came in droplets. And I said, oh my God, I ruined it, And then I got to say, hey, I really like this effect. This is really nice.
I would say I think the texture really helps convey just her energy in this picture. Because you see it, and that kind of almost gives it the illusion that it's nearly dusk. It's almost time to go to sleep. And she's relaxing. She still has her sun hat on. There's still a little bit of energy left coming into the sun, and she's just relaxing.
Right.
And again, to be relaxing in a darkening forest shows an incredible amount of inner strength and power.
Yes. And this is also another one in the meditation series. Here again, we're bringing some furniture into a natural setting. And I like the contrast that creates. You can pull your favorite chair into the woods and rest in it, and it works just fine.
Yeah, you're just at home in nature as you are within your own home.
Yeah. And you can see that, especially in this figure. And actually, this is the same chair that we saw before.
It's that blue chair?
Yeah. But here it's it seems to have deteriorated slightly since that
just
time.
A little. Just a little. Well, you know what? I just assumed it was reclining back more in this picture.
Well, it is a reclining chair that goes back quite far. But another interesting thing is gold background like that, the sky in gold. That's something that comes out of the Middle Ages. A lot of times they use gold for the sky, which was supposed to represent heaven. So this has another dimension to it. And again, these pictures are all done on black paper, which brings out the colors much more vividly than if it were on white. And I had a friend that tipped me off to that, and I did a lot of drawings on black paper. It's very especially suited for pastel, I think.
Absolutely. No, I like the effect in the background because it almost looks stormy yet peaceful at the same time with the shadows that are coming across that gold.
Yeah.
To me, it kind of gives an almost stormy type of illusion to it as well.
Okay. Okay, this is part of the creatress. There was a time when a lot of my younger friends were becoming pregnant now and then. And whenever someone came pregnant, so especially towards the end of it, I would come up to them and say, will you pose for me?
Well, it's a very special time, and it's not like you can, that's something you have to take advantage of while you have. If you want to be able to sketch a pregnant woman, that's, to get the genuine effect, you can't just have somebody stuff pillows under their shirt. To capture really the all the changes that are going through her emotionally, spiritually, physically, you have to,
And the interesting thing, no one ever turned me down. And the other thing is, and one of the reasons why I wanted to do this series is because usually women, under more patriarchal circumstances, consider themselves ugly when they have a large belly. And the interesting thing is happening now that a lot of people are wearing tight sweaters over their body, actually bringing out, emphasizing their belly. And this is a very recent but a very important development, I think.
It's true.
And it's nice to see, that people are taking pride in their pregnancy, whereas before they were trying to hide it, more or less.
It's very true. For a while there, if a girl got in trouble, they just kind of shipped her away and raised the child as a daughter, and that was something shameful, But when it comes to being pregnant, I know my sister was recently pregnant. She just gave birth to another child. She said that's one of the times in her life that she really does feel beautiful.
Really?
Yeah. She said that she feels very beautiful. She said there's just something about the idea that she's creating something, just the energy that she's feeling from the child while it's still in her. She said it's just, it makes her feel beautiful, something about it. So that's most likely why none of them ever turned you down, because they're like, this is the prettiest I'm going to get, sure.
Yeah.
See me in all of my creative, in all of my, gestational glory. This is what I'm meaning to do. I'm embodying the spirit of life right now.
Yes. And to see it as beauty, a mark of beauty. This is part of a triptych. It's called Woman and Mirror. This is the first in the series. And it actually marks different stages in a woman's maturity. When she's young, she's mostly just thinking about herself. And it's very narcissistic, where anything around her, she's completely unaware of anything around her. She's just thinking of herself and her body and how she looks.
Very self-involved when we're young.
And if we can, okay, this is the second, no, this is the third one, I think.
Let's see.
Yeah, that's the second one.
Okay, we'll go back to the other
Okay,
one in a
now
moment.
here she's not looking just at herself, but she actually turning and sees an image of herself in the mirror. This is called Woman and Mirror. And so this is a development in her psyche that she's no longer looking just in herself, but she's starting to look outside herself. And then in the last, here she sees herself and she's staring at the image that is her own image. And this is, now she's completely moved out from just self-image and looking out into the world and seeing herself as a very strong, determined woman.
It certainly is a powerful piece, especially when displayed all together. Just the changes that we go through generationally, from one stage of our lives to the next. It's certainly very interesting.
Yes, this is another in the Blue Lumina series. And I'm mostly a minimalist painter. Less is more, the way I see it. And just to show the outline of the figures, all you really need to create a very strong image.
This is another one of those I see almost the mysticism outlining the figure.
Yes, and that's the benefit of blue, working with blue in.
This one, is this one's for the end?
No, I don't want to do.
Okay.
Well, we can look at just the image. This is part of the Goddess series, and what I'm depicting here is the woman. She's not aware of the goddess, but she's trying to pick herself up. She's struggling with all her personal problems. She's young, and the goddess, although she's not aware of it, the goddess is standing behind her and making sure that she has the strength to lift herself up.
Of course.
And that is the first introduction to one's journey into the spirit and into the goddess. And this is also part of the Goddess series. So we have a woman walking through the woods. That happens to be my dog.
Oh.
And she's looking over her shoulder, and this time she sees an image of the great mother goddess looking at her. And it shows that in the most in times least expected, something like this can happen to you, where the goddess appears to you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like an epiphany that you don't expect it, but it completely changes your life when it happens.
Absolutely. And I like how it's a stern look almost on her face, but
yes,
it's not frightening.
That's the goddess.
It's
yeah.
stern but not frightening.
Right,
You know,
right.
so it's almost, like an overly bearing mother or grandmother or teacher or another strong woman in your life. It's a stern look, but it's not one that you should be afraid of.
Right,
So,
right.
very much like the great goddess, you shouldn't be afraid of her, but she has some lessons for you.
Yes, yes. And so this is a woman who's advanced to the point where the divine feminine is within her.
Mm-hmm.
It's not outside her, it's within her. And she's celebrating because when that happens, you feel an immense rush of joy. And she's holding up the tambourine in her hand. And she's surrounded by the trees and the woods. And there's light shining on her body. And
I like how the tambourine's glowing, almost as if that's like her source of power.
yeah.
Like she's holding it almost like this is her source of power.
Well, the thing is, drumming was very common in
Mm-hmm.
Paleolithic times. If you read the book that I mentioned here by Lane Redmond called When the Drummers Were Women, it was a source of power.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as the patriarchal culture took over, they forbid women to use drums at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it instead was made as a form of celebrating going into war, going
Yes,
into
the war drums, everybody's familiar with
yeah,
that.
yeah. And that's just another example how the patriarchal took something from the culture of the goddess and then turned it completely around to its opposite.
Wow. No, I just, like I said, she looks so joyous there, and there's her source of power, her tambourine.
Yeah. This is another in the Genesis series. And I really enjoyed doing this one. I didn't know if I could pull it off, but it really came out nice. But it's another way of expressing, the creator is a woman, and she knows what she's doing,
Yeah.
and she's very determined.
And that earth is just glowing behind her hands.
Yeah, and she's shaping it, molding it.
Mm-hmm.
And the nice thing, this came to me as I was working on the painting, to use her hair as morphing into the dust from galaxies, when you see, and then stars forming in those clouds.
Mm-hmm.
It works really well in this painting. I thought
It does.
I really liked that effect.
It's a very nice effect, and like I said, just the fact that earth, it almost does seem to just glow, like almost like I'm expecting it to
Yes.
start pulsating, and the goddess herself is limitless, and she is the universe.
Yes,
And it's a
and that's
a
really the
powerful
spiritual
effect.
quality.
very powerful effect.
This is another one in the mandala series, one of the first ones. And it sort of combines the wheel that we're familiar in tantric, where there's different areas in our spine that are active. And usually they're represented as wheels. But anyway, this is sort of a combination of the mandala and the tantric images. And it's the fiery wheel. It's also something that has a lot of power. And the woman here, she recognizes the power and celebrating that power. And this is another in the goddess series. And here she's completely aware of the goddess, and she opens her arms to it, and is not. She's not put off by the power that she sees in the goddess, but she's honoring the goddess with open arms.
She's ready to embrace and be enveloped by the light of the goddess and by
Right.
the power of the goddess, and to find that within herself.
Yes, come, open your arms, that I may show to you my full radiance of love. This is an interesting. I don't exactly know what's going on here, and I'm really interested in getting a woman's point of view.
Okay. No, I see almost, I think I see kind of two things going on here. I see very much the radiating light, the radiating spiritual energy. And then it seems like almost in the foreground she's cowering from it, almost like she's afraid of her own power. She's afraid of being herself. She's afraid of her femininity. And she's laying there almost waiting for that light to touch her to be reborn. That's what I see from here.
Yeah, and she's hugging herself sort of in a fetal position, as if, I know, to me it represents that she's like having a panic attack almost.
Maybe.
And she's looking to the mandala for comfort or help, for healing.
No, that's certainly something I didn't think of. I immediately saw rejection of power, not looking to one for assistance.
That's interesting.
That's it. She's looking toward it
Right.
to help her, to help
Yeah.
you. Because like you said, she is fetal position. I was looking as rejection of power. You know,
Interesting.
almost like she's afraid of it. And you know, when children are afraid to grow up like that,
Right,
like she's
right.
rejecting it. And
Yeah,
no,
it
that
could
is-
be looked at the same.
But also like a child, maybe she's seeking comfort.
Yeah, and even as I was working on it, I knew that half of it had to be in black and white, and the other half had to be colored. And another thing, if it's black and white, then it's limiting something. It's not, you can't see the full effect of what the person or what the scene is all about.
No.
It's
No.
in black and white. It's reduced to just two colors. And this is another in the mandalas. This is a very early painting, one of the first. And actually, when I first started out, I didn't always have models, and this is actually taken from a art book.
Oh.
And I was just testing myself to see if I could draw the figure, you know. And then at the time I was learning calligraphy, and the whole idea was to include the word along with the image, because I started out as a poet and the word was very important to me. And somehow I wanted to be able to combine the image with the word.
Okay.
And whether it succeeds or not, but I had a lot of fun doing it. But it was not easy to get it going around in a circle like that.
Of course not. No. No, I wouldn't think so.
Okay, this is a pretty recent one. This is, I call Janus. And as we know, the goddess Janus looks forward and backwards. That's why January is named after her. And this is really like looking backward when feminism, when you were more or less just following whatever was asked of you and trying to be a good, faithful, obedient woman or girl. And the woman sitting next to her is looking out, and she's unclothed, and she's staring into into the future. And sitting beside them is the leopard, who offers them the protection that they need or are looking for. So it means a lot to me. It has a lot of meaning to it. And it sort of is a expression of feminism today. You know, there are a lot of women that are still looking back, still holding to what they thought was perfectly fine life, and others who are now looking forward into the future.
And looking toward that change that they can affect.
Yeah.
It's very true.
We had this one, I
Yes,
think,
we
before.
did. Okay.
This one is Eden Revisited. This is Eve, and she's looking up, and she sees the glow above her head, which is, I don't know if you can see it here, but there's another shape behind her holding up the wand that glows. And actually, the way I see it at least, she's leading Eve out of the garden. But she's not throwing her out, she's guiding her out. It's not that she's done anything wrong, but it's just that she's serving as the guide for her.
Yeah, she's just helping her find her way.
Yeah. So she's not being accused, she's not being condemned, but she's receiving guidance and help. And this is Adam and Eve revisited. And here we have Eve is a very strong woman here, and she's pregnant, and the Adam is very loving, very compassionate, and supporting her. And this is just another way of looking at the Adam and Eve story, giving it a different take.
Just a different perspective on it.
And this is a series of paintings. This is actually the one, this is like a triptych. This is actually the last in the triptych.
Okay.
I don't know if we can get to the other ones. That's the second one.
Okay, so let's try one more.
Okay, and that's the first one. And here the image above her is really an image of the goddess of Lascelles, which first appeared as a sculpture engraving on the opening of a cave. And in the Magdalenian era, when they had these caves with cave paintings. And she's holding a bison horn in her hand. The idea is she's she's hovering above this sleeping woman and trying to awaken her from her sleep.
She's trying to reawaken her to the old days.
Yeah. And here again, the ancient Paleolithic goddess hovering above the image. Now she's turned over slightly, and she's aware that something's happening above her.
Yeah, she's starting to stir.
Yes. And here, now she's on her back, she's looking up, or at least she's aware that there's something above her. And her whole body radiates with the light from the goddess. I'm sorry, I don't have there's like a poem that underlines each one of these, that where the goddess is calling to her, saying, I haven't forgotten you. Do you remember the times that we spent together? And
the text is underneath some of these images. Hold on, it starts from the beginning. Awaken, my beloved.
yes.
Okay. Yes, awaken, my beloved. Awaken from your long sleep. I have not abandoned you. I remember the incense, and rose petals you brought to my altars. I remember when you danced on hillsides under a full moon. The old ways are still alive and beckon me.
Right. Continue.
Oh. Awaken, my beloved, awaken from your long sleep. I have not abandoned you. In the deepest chambers of your heart, I will blow across the coals until they burst into flame. Awaken, my beloved, my light descends upon you. Your body glows in the radiance of my love. Come, then arise. You once danced in the sacred circles under a rising moon. Do you remember? The old ways are still alive.
Right.
It was certainly a powerful triptych, invoking memories from a life long since past.
Right. That's the whole idea.
Yeah, no, I'm saying that's.
I'm glad you feel the power of it, because it does have a lot of power.
Indeed,
And it's really trying to awaken us to a time when we honored the goddess.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very important part of our life. And that all has been forgotten. And not accidentally.
By some, but not by all. By some, but not by all.
Yes.
No, the goddess does still live.
Yes, yes. Well, like here, the goddess remembers,
Mm-hmm.
and she's trying to help the woman remember as well, not to forget what happened. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what I'm trying to do with this whole series of paintings,
Mm-hmm.
is to awaken women to the past when they were in complete control of their life, which we no longer see any longer.
No, that's not something that we see very often. But I do believe that this would be a fine note to end tonight's show on. We are unfortunately out of time, but Kimberly, thank you so much for coming down to All Business Media TV tonight and presenting your artwork to us. This has definitely been an awakening experience for me as a feminist and as a woman, and I can only hope that our viewers feel the same.
Great, I'm glad to hear that.
All right, well, thank you very much for tuning in to tonight's edition of All Business Media FM TV. Make sure to tune in next time. I'm Chrissy J. Good night. Okay. All right, so you did it. You did it. We made it through.